Welcome to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm super excited today. I have social justice leader Tamika Mallory.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with you, sis.
I'm happy to be with you too.
Yeah.
I know we are limited with time, so I want to jump right in. Let's talk about, I know your story, but let's talk about how and why you got started with activism and social justice.
Well, my parents were activists all my life, so I don't know anything different. People ask me all the time, like, what's your first memory? And I'm like, I don't, it's like church. You don't remember when you went to church the first time. You just know you're there. Exactly. And I often use church as an example of what life was like for me as a kid. Because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, going to church on Sunday wasn't optional.
Right.
My grandmother's like, everybody's going, aunts, everybody. We and that's just what we did as a family, especially in the South.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the movement, if you will, happening in the North, my parents living in Harlem and being very active, they basically handled the movement and rallies and things like that the same way that one would go to church on Sunday.
Gotcha.
You had no choice but to be involved. You had to get up, you had to go, and they forced us into leadership positions that, I didn't necessarily understand it all, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
We made it fun.
Yeah.
And also we learned a lot. We were, it was educational.
Okay.
As we got older, we started to take more seriously, the issues.
Okay.
However, also the streets were calling.
Right.
So I had a moment when I just, I was a runaway. And I just was not focused on anything that had to do with older people wearing dashikis and, their big bone earrings and their African culture, things I love today. But at the time, I was like, this is corny. Because, also I'm watching Paid in Full and New Jack City and loving Tupac. So I'm like, where the bamboo earrings? I wanted to wear the Uptown, all the colors, the flavors of, what do you call it? The Reeboks, 5411.
Oh, 5411.
That's right. This is Pele jackets.
Yes.
This is where
You're
I wanted
taking me back,
to be.
Tamika. Uh-huh.
That's what I wanted. And instead, it was a different thing.
Yeah.
And we went to church on Sunday and to the rallies on Saturday. So there was no break.
Well, let me ask you this. Before you continue, how did they get involved? How did they get started? Were their parents involved?
Well, my grandfather was an activist within his company where he works.
Okay.
He was in a factory, and he was one of those to help to establish a union for the employees, and particularly to help fight for the rights of Black people within his industry. So, I think the spirit was in him. And, we don't have the time to cover some of the other things that I've now learned about my ancestors, like the fact that a man by the name of Mallory, last name Mallory, he was involved in a moment where 3 men went to go meet with the army and try to get Africans freed that were in the South. So, and the story is real deep. I've actually read about it in the New York Times. I found this man in the African American History Museum, and I know that there is some connection.
His name is Mallory.
Because the owner of the plantation that he lived on was his home was about an hour away from my grandmother, and it was on a river that is Roanoke River, and she lives, and my grandparents live in Roanoke Rapids.
Oh, wow.
So there's no way that there's not a connection, but he was like an activist in his own right, going to try to broker a deal where some of the enslaved individuals would be able to use this particular port to get free. And it worked, actually. And so it's just in our blood. And I think my dad introduced my mom.
Okay, gotcha.
And so they just became real strong, supporters. My parents were never out front. That's not what they wanted.
Okay.
They were not leaders in that way, in terms of being speakers. They were backroom funders.
Workers.
They took their resources and helped to, keep the movement going, keep the organization going. And they also, they did jobs. My dad was on the security team because my father's worked in corrections all his life.
Okay.
And so, and my mom was also very involved, especially with the young people. So that's the way that they activated, if you will.
Right.
But my big mouth, I was sort of pushed, not so much pushed, but it became very natural for me to be a voice within in the work.
Okay. Did your son's father's death have anything to do with making you more involved or less involved, or?
So I think the way that I describe it is that, it was my parents' movement, and I was going because, again, I had no choice.
Okay.
And then, of course, I there were things that I loved about it, became habitual also.
Right.
But then as time went on, life happened. And I used the church scenario again. It's like you go to church and, you listening to little songs, but you got your little coloring book or whatever as a kid.
Yeah.
When life starts happening, you be like, ooh, that song is good to my soul. Like, yes, you start feeling it.
Right.
So life happened. I began to see things in the community that I didn't like, and it wasn't my parents speaking on it. I knew that things were wrong. And then when my son's father was murdered, he was shot twice and left in a ditch for 2 weeks before a woman walking her dog found him completely decomposed. We were unable to give him the proper burial. Just understanding his life and all the challenges that he faced growing up, it helped me to connect the dots that it was no longer my parents' movement, but it was mine. Like, I understood. And I also knew that my son, his shot at life would be me getting involved and trying to make the world a better place, right? Because if you just leave it as it is, what would stop him from becoming the next statistic, if you will, like his father? So that's why I really, really got in.
Right.
Once his father died, I was like, okay, this is my thing.
Right.
Now.
Had you not had that experience, which was super traumatic, do you think you would have had a different path? Well,
I was on the wrong path. So
that kind of like jolted you?
Well, first of all, in my family, when you have a baby, you don't put the baby's clothes in the washing machine and all of that. I know you know about it. You got to wash things by hand.
Yeah.
The baby's small. So having a baby slowed me down anyway, because my mother was like, first of all, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
You wanted a baby. You're 18. You're going to raise it.
Right.
And so that slowed me down. But then his father died 2 years later.
Right.
And although we weren't even together at the time, but still, it's major reality when you don't have anybody to even call and argue with. Like I couldn't even call him beefing like, it was nothing to say. It was on me, period.
Right.
And I had to grow up really fast. So my son and I have grown up together, if you will.
Okay. What do you think you would have done, or when you were younger, what did you think you were going to do? Or you already knew, like, it's likely I'm going to be in this space?
No. I always wanted to be, and I think the skill set that I possess has been very helpful in terms of what I do in the movement. I always wanted to be an event planner. Like, I wanted to do weddings.
Okay.
That was my thing. As a kid, I was like, I could plan an amazing wedding. And I used to do role play, if you will, in my room with my dolls, with other people, my friends. I was really big on this idea of just planning weddings. Okay. Which later on, it became understanding that I just have a strategic mind and I understand details very well. And I'm a very good organizer. And so, I can see how, now I see how that dream of planning the little details of a wedding, because I also like fly shit, you know what I'm saying? I like beauty,
you do.
Opulence.
Yeah.
I love that.
Opulence,
I love that. And so, basically those skills developed into a larger thing, which is being a strategist in this work. But it was always there. And then when I was little, I talked too much all the time. Like, I was always in trouble.
I was a talker too.
My mom, I was always in trouble. And my mom was like, that mouth,
I'm
telling you. And she said, I often say to folks, be careful about how you suppress things about your children that might aggravate you.
Right.
But in fact, it is their passion, or it will eventually drive or be the driving force for their success. So if they like to run around the house all the time, get them in track.
Right.
Don't tell them sit down, or, you're going to be punished for running. Maybe it might not be the appropriate time to run.
Right. Not in class, not in the middle of the day. Yeah.
Not in a dangerous space. But nonetheless, you have to find a way to help them blossom in those areas, because my talking probably should have been in debate, right?
For sure.
I should have been going maybe to a speech therapist that, speech therapy is not just for people who don't speak well. It can also be for enhancing how you speak, a literature class at a young age. Thankfully, there was so much education around us, so much reading and listening to speeches that it did help. But I also felt like when I spoke, I was, always in trouble, always. And I got it. It was the wrong place, right? In class, in the middle of a test, you can't just turn around and like, yo, Mary, what's up, yo? And that's the type of thing that I did. Later on, they appreciated, but at the time, my mom was like, if I get a call one more game.
I'm over it, girl. Yeah. I hold that thought. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand, and I'm here with Tamika Mallory. I want to ask you, I was trying to think in my mind, when did I discover you? I mean, obviously you've been in this world, but I was just trying to think, when did I start seeing Tamika Mallory's name? When did you start going viral? When did you become famous? Like, when did that, I mean, it's a weird question, but it is like, when did this happen? Because I don't know when it happened, but I just remember, to me, who's it? Okay, all right, okay, this is, what was there an event? Was there a moment you think happened that kind of propelled you into this spotlight?
Well, there's been moments, if you will, and some of, there's just been moments.
Okay.
I would say that the first time, because most of my experience in this work has been as a servant. I worked for other individuals, and I worked for an organization. And while I had a profile, people knew me, and especially in our circles.
Yeah, and that line of work.
Absolutely. I was, I had articles in Essence. I used to write a column in Essence. I had been acknowledged by Jet Magazine, Ebony Magazine. So I was, in the space.
Yes.
People knew me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until the Women's March where, it expanded.
Okay.
My audience grew, my haters grew.
Right.
And the amount of media attention I received, it certainly, it grew. So that was the beginning.
Okay.
And I think, and then of course, in the midst of all of that, there was so much controversy.
Right.
So many difficult moments. And I think, being on The View in the middle of one of the worst, most heated, most controversial moments of my life, and having to sit there and deal with Meghan McCain. And
was it the Farrakhan situation? Because, so for people that aren't aware, some people have an issue with you having a relationship with Farrakhan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. With Minister.
Minister
Honorable
Minister Louis Farrakhan.
That's right.
So some people have an issue with that, and you've had to defend your relationship with him, I guess.
Certainly, and so in the midst of that, sitting on The View, a lot of people didn't really know what was happening to me. Right. Folks busy. They didn't have time to be focused on like who's attacking who.
Right.
But when I was on The View, I was challenged, and I gave my response. She said, well, the minister said this and he said that and he said all these things. And I'm like, listen, my support for the minister has nothing to do with these things that he said, because I, at that point, had already over and over and over said, I don't agree with those things. And I would say them, not even that I would say them different. Here's my position on these issues.
Right.
And I do not believe that any person, and particularly a woman, should be held responsible for the words of anyone else, and especially a man. That's just flat out. And that's it. And so, she didn't want to accept that. But I was not going to back down from it. And my position was, it's not what he has said. It is what he's done in the Black community and what the Nation of Islam means for even Black men in my own family. So I was just very clear about it. And people were like, I get it. Like, I totally understand it. And that was the next moment where I started to receive a lot more support and a lot of eyeballs.
Okay.
Because folks were like, wait a minute, now Meghan McCain is attacking Tamika Mallory, and we don't know why, we don't understand it. And we hear this woman saying, listen, this is my these are my theories, opinions, feelings. This is where I stand.
Yeah.
And it helped to get a lot more support coming out of, a really dark time. So that happened. And, I guess that would be the next thing. And then, of course, between Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery and working on those issues, I guess that would be the next, big eye-opening moment about me and my activism and my leadership. Just to go back to the beginning of that, though, in New York, I was well known for with the haters and the lovers.
Yeah.
Since I was really young, before any public stage, because we were so active. People knew us. They saw us. We were among those who were like fighting for justice in the city.
Right.
But that national, international attention, it came after each one of those steps.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think. I feel like I remember The View. I remember I remember all that kind of stuff. I feel like that was more recent, but I do remember The View and the Women's March. Before we go down that path, I wanted to ask you, because I watched your interview with Angie Martinez. I wanted to ask you how activism or this kind of life in terms of this work affected your relationship with your son. Because I work a lot. I work a whole lot. I have a small one, and I know it's super hard for me.
Yeah. It's difficult, and you have to be intentional. And I was young. Like, how do you know, right? Yeah. At that age, what you're supposed to do. I knew I had to have a career. Mm-hmm. I knew I had to make money. Yeah. Right. I knew, of course I had to have a job, because otherwise he would have, that wouldn't have worked out. Right. Yeah. I knew that I had talent, and I also knew I was passionate about real issues that impact him. Yeah. Right. So I was on the right path. I wasn't in the club, which I'm not, saying you shouldn't. I hope that you absolutely
are in the
club.
Mom,
I am giving you some advice. Okay. Make sure you get your twerk on just as much as you get your work on. It's really
what a line, Tamika.
Well, I tell people all the time that I'm the twerk and work girl. I do both, because you have to pour into yourself, and you need a lot of joy.
Sidebar, because I was telling someone that I was going to interview today, like, well, she be out and she be, and I was like, why can't she be out? Like, what is going on? Like,
people are all confused.
And I felt like this is the same argument that people have about, and you're not a pastor. You're not, and not that pastors can't go out, but I feel
they should be able to go out too.
But I was just like, well, why can't she go out? Like, what? I was really like, well, why can't she?
And there are a lot of people that have that impression. I don't care. It is what it is. Yeah. Because I just can't live my life. I'm 42. Who knows what will happen? What do they say? We're here for a good time, not a long time. Yeah. So we don't know what will happen in life. And I am completely. I'm so grateful for 40. Because 40 gave me the ability to start saying, I don't really care what you think. Yeah. Like, I'm living for me and not for you. And it's okay if I'm not the one who you believe can help us get closer to liberation. It's okay. Like, there's so many people doing incredible work out here. And I want you to find your person or become that. Yeah. But I am who I am. Yeah. And I'm definitely going to enjoy my life. So that's number one. Okay. Don't work so much that you don't enjoy. Okay. But you do have to be intentional, because my son suffered a lot as a result of, me being gone and not even knowing. I didn't even know what I was doing to him. I thought that because he was with my parents, he was fine. In my mind, it's like, shoot, we were with our grandparents. Yeah. I thought he was fine. I didn't realize that because he also didn't have his dad. I thought since he didn't know his father, he was 2. So there's no memory as far as I'm concerned, of his father. And he doesn't have any recollection. But there is still an emotional trauma that happens when especially from being around your grandfather. So you see the interaction between your mom and aunts and uncles with their father. Yeah. Right. And so you're missing something. Yeah. Friends, fathers dropping them off to school. So he was dealing with that. And I had no idea, wasn't helping him process it. And I became a drill sergeant. Okay. That was because when I showed up, it was like, you better be doing this. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And we spent time, he says sometimes like, all right, Mom, you dragging it. about you was there. I was mad, but you was there.
Yeah.
We went on vacations. We spent time together. I would see him a lot of nights, but he also was with my parents, and it probably was like a 50-50 split.
Okay.
And when people start getting older, they don't really know all the signs of a lot of things.
Yeah.
So my parents didn't know some of the things he was listening to, watching, because he's using devices that they have no idea
how to even work.
They don't know what's going on. Right. And as long as he was doing his homework, then everybody, but there were other things happening, and he was hurt in that,
Okay.
So it took us time to sort of repair the relationship, and now we're besties, and he still is my big headache, but that's my guy.
So you think you needed to be there more?
I was there because, I did not see my son for weeks at a time or anything like that. I saw him almost, every night, but I wasn't there.
Okay.
I was in the room.
Okay.
But I was like, on the phone, not listening, not really paying attention.
Okay.
And also I was unaware that he was going through some level of depression. I didn't know it. In fact, it took me until the last, year or two, well, maybe I would say last 4 or 5 years of my own life to determine what depression looks like and to acknowledge that it was happening to me. So of course, when I was 26 years old, I didn't know to say this is depression and he actually needs a therapist. How would I know that? And the stigma of talking to a therapist was still something very real for me.
Right. Okay. Was there ever an expectation, or did you ever encourage him to get into activism?
No. It's almost like I don't know if you sort of like preacher kids. I use the church scenario all the time.
Which I understand.
Right. So, like preacher kids, sometimes they've seen it so much and they experienced so much, and then they've also felt like they were never able to be their true selves and, live out their other dreams because it was just set up. Daddy, or granddaddy was a preacher or a deacon or whatever, and everybody's gonna follow that. And so they shield their children from having to experience the same thing. I didn't necessarily shield him, but I never forced him or tried to force him into it. What Colin Kaepernick is the moment when my son, I saw, he knew there were issues, but when Colin took the knee, he was kind of like, all right, everything's going to be good. Like, of course, he could take a knee and they're going to support him. And when he saw how much resistance Colin received, he was calling me like, mommy, this is ridiculous. And I'm never watching football again. And, the NFL, this and that. He was like, boy.
That was the breaking point for him.
Oh, man. I mean, he was so passionate about it. So, now that, time has gone on, he still has strong opinions about a lot of things, but he also is beginning to understand that just because today we feel so strongly about one thing doesn't mean we just burn up everything and throw it out. He's starting to come to a place of like, okay, there can be reconciliation. Okay. Because he was like, everybody's finished. That's it.
I love it. Okay, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Tamika Mallory. We were talking about your son and motherhood. Something else that you've been super, super open about is your battle with addiction, I guess. Yeah. Can you talk about how it started and then how you were able to, where you are today, how you were able to get better and that kind of thing?
One of the things I suffer with is being unable to sleep well. I don't lay down and knock out for 7 hours or 6 hours. I don't sleep like that.
You don't?
Still to this moment.
Is that because of, were you always like that, or is it because of the work you do?
It's because of the work I do.
Yeah,
for sure. Because I used to sleep all day, honey, all day and night. And, and it's not just the work, it's being a leader in the work.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things on my mind, and I used to write down, like in the middle of the night, I have notebooks, many of them, where I wake up every 2 hours and just try to write the things that is, whatever's happening in my mind, which means my subconscious is always moving.
Yeah.
And I, at the time during the Women's March, obviously with everything that I was going through, I was really just, I was just, what would I say the word is? I was depressed and dark, but I was also angry.
Okay.
Like, being misunderstood, lied on, dealing with white women all the time. I was really angry. It was just so many things happening. So when it was time to go to bed at night, I wasn't resting. And I didn't have an understanding of meditation and, what you're eating. Like, here I am, eating cereal before going to sleep, and the sugar is not helping.
That's not helping at all.
All those things. I didn't know anything about that. So, I'm in this space and all I know is read, write, speak, go, plan. And it was very taxing. So one day, when I was showing up to work, I started looking bad, during the March planning. I was looking bad, and I was telling someone else that I couldn't sleep. And the person mentioned to me that they had they take this pill and they sleep. And I was like, wow, man,
I want to sleep.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And they gave me one, and I took it. And that was Xanax.
Okay.
Right. And then I went to the doctor and I got a prescription for Xanax. And then the Xanax wasn't enough. I mean, the doctor wouldn't increase the prescription, the dosage, exactly. And then the next thing you know, I was in the process of taking the Xanax and opioids back to back, just trying to figure out what to do. Because anyone who's ever been caught in the sort of the disease of addiction, right? It just gets worse. Like, you start off a half a pill and now you're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Because your tolerance gets higher.
Exactly. So it was just a nasty cycle of me just popping pills all day, trying to numb my mind. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine that every second of the day I was having to answer questions, having media contacting us with a new story. We're misappropriating money. Some person came up with a story about what they think we said, what we mean. White women upset about why we want to bring the issues of race into a dialogue about women's rights. Right. I mean, it was
a lot of pressure.
A lot. And still my son, I'm still, also trying to be a mom. It was a lot. And by the way, a lot of folks don't understand that you're not just hearing it all and sort of dealing with it. I have to make decisions. Like, there are people depending on me to make the right decisions, to say the right things. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure. No one can prepare you for it. Yeah. It's not that, it's not that kind of thing.
And I feel like everyone calls on you.
Well, yeah, but at this time, yes, I still deal with it. And I, and I do as much as I can, which I'm getting much better, getting older. No, can't do it. Boundaries and all of that. But at that time, we were leading one of the biggest global movements for women since the feminist movement, but even more. No march has ever had the amount of women that the Women's March brought together, women and our allies, families, loved ones, ever. It was the biggest in history. Yeah. We didn't even know that's what we were planning towards. But guess what? Those people who want to oppress women, they knew it, they could see it, and they were creating confusion. Right. There was a New York Times article that came out recently that showed how the Russian bots were used to their Twitter farms to create confusion online about one of my partners in Until Freedom. She's one of the co-founders now, but she was one of the 4 co-chairs of the Women's March, Linda Sarsour. And she's Palestinian. She's from Brooklyn. She's super feisty. And, the fact that she's Palestinian, that was in and of itself a reason to attack. And so they went after her, but by extension, the others in the Women's March became a target. And then, of course, the New York Times says that, by the time they did the research on the issue with anti-Semitism and it being addressed towards me, they are not able to determine whether the Russian bots were still involved. But we know that there were days that I would wake up and it would be 400 articles on Twitter all people tagging and tweeting at me from all of these different accounts. You imagine that happening to you.
Yeah.
You know, that's not just me and my boyfriend fell out and I'm having some problems at work.
Yeah.
This is like the world going after you, and people around you that you don't know that you're trying to plan this big thing with, or that you are now, you know, organizing with, because many of those women, we never met them. We showed up at the Women's March as 3 people, Carmen, Linda, and me, with a bunch of people we didn't know. We brought our folks in, but we were still organizing with folks we never met, never organized anything with them ever before. No one can prepare you for it.
Yeah,
there's no school, there's no class, there's nowhere you can go.
Right.
And I don't know if we realized we knew we were standing up, and that we were taking a position against fascism and sexism and racism and in all of its forms from the beginning of time.
Right.
Not just Trump related, but that he was the face of it in the moment that everyone wanted to push back. So we were organizing that, but I don't think that we sat back and realized we weren't fighting Trump for real. We were fighting a whole system that is well resourced. These people have trillions of dollars. Right. I was watching Steve Bannon on TV. I guess he was sentenced to some particular time, I don't know, 4 months in jail for contempt of court in the January 6th hearings or whatever, something. Yeah. Anyway. And I was just looking at him thinking, wow, he could have hired them. I don't know. Right? It could have been him. It could have been Giuliani, who has a relationship with the Russians. I don't know. Right. You know, maybe not, but all of those scenarios are possible. Yeah. So imagine that we're these, you know, women going up against that type of system. Yeah, I was taking anything I could take to try to calm my mind. Right. To try to settle my stomach, you know, getting up every morning knowing I got to go back into this. You know?
When did you know it was a problem?
When I was no longer working, I was no longer in the midst of like the height of the craziness. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, now I could get back to my regular life. And I thought I could just turn it off. I mean, I kind of knew I couldn't, because over time it just gotten increasingly worse. Okay. But there was a particular moment when I was just like, I'm going to go cold turkey. I had a friend who went cold turkey. Okay. And she was like, you know, telling me, you can do it. It's going to be 2 or 3 days. You're not going to feel well. Okay. But eventually you'll get better. And I tried that particular day, and I was extremely sick, and it was like really painful. I think my situation that was different from hers is that I was taking more than one type of medication, right? Yeah. I was, you know, taking my anti-anxiety meds, the Xanax, whatever other, the Percocets, whatever I could get. And so I think she didn't have that. So she was able to stop. Whereas for me, there were many triggers happening in my body at once. Okay. And so you went to rehab? I called Jason Williams, the NBA All-Star. We know he's had so many different challenges with abuse of alcohol and different things. And, you know, we all know the story. And Jason's such an incredible man. And I'm so grateful to him, because I was looking online and trying to find programs, and I had a couple concerns. One, I needed to go somewhere that was outside of my insurance network. Okay. Because, you know, insurance covers a certain type of thing, and I needed something a lot more intense. Okay. I knew that there was actual mental health stuff that had to be addressed that they were not dealing with at the local treatment program. Yeah. And so the other thing I didn't want to get addicted to another drug
that was going to get you out of it.
The first thing. And most of the treatment programs, that's what they were offering. Okay. So, and then the other thing was I couldn't afford it to go to the places that had what I needed. Right. I couldn't afford it. So I call him up and I'm like, Jason, you know, this is a thing. And I talked to him about it for, I guess, 6 months, 7 months. And every time he was like, okay, you could go tomorrow. You got your bag? Like, that's the way it works. Like, people can get you in tonight if you really, really want to go. And I would be like, oh no, I got this march next week and I'm doing this and that. And he'd be like, listen, sis, whenever you're ready. But he would always either send a message or call me and say, you know, because if you think about Jason Williams' life, he says, you know, you got to deal with it before it deals with you, because nobody knows about it right now. You have it under wraps. Nobody knew. My family didn't know. No one knew. And he's like, no one knows about it. But eventually something's going to happen and everybody's going to find out. And at that point, you no longer control your narrative.
At all.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, at the point that somebody finds out you're buying it on the black market, at the point that, you know, you accidentally have an accident or you get arrested somewhere and they find it in your bag or whatever, at that point, you no longer have the ability to tell your story from your truth, you know, it's going to be other people's narrative. And I was like, damn, you know, and eventually it just got to the point, one of my colleagues one day, you know, was just like, nah, something's wrong with you. Like, I could see it, you know, it's not, something's up. You gotta get whatever that is together. And that was the moment when I said, I'm ready. And within a week, I was checked in.
Okay. I want to come back to this. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. I'm here with Tamika Mallory. I want to ask you, in terms of this conversation we're having about addiction, I want to ask you, do you still have bad days?
When you say bad days, what do you mean? Like, do I feel like I need it?
Yeah.
Oh, no. God bless. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Jesus.
Okay.
Like, no.
Okay.
What I have is a great, great, great therapist.
Okay.
And I suggest.
Yeah, I'm in therapy.
Oh, man.
Black woman.
Listen,
Sonia,
it's a black man, and Michael, thank you.
Yeah.
He is helping me process my people-pleasing sort of, and my control issues with things that I can't control.
Yeah.
And it has been freeing. So now I realize, and you know, and I still have my sleeping issues, but I've learned better ways to cope with it. Again, what you eat, being able to sit still, quiet in my mind, you know, and I'm not against the fact that people should take anti-anxiety medicine if you need it, you know. But a lot of it has to do with how you take care of yourself. Yeah. And that's the journey that I'm on, working on eating better and just being healthier overall. Yeah. But I am not, again, I want to be real careful about this because it's easy, you know, to say, oh, eat better and sit quiet. And some folks may be trying to do that and it's not working yet. So if you need to take your anti-anxiety meds, you should do that. And because I have been where I also felt ashamed, like, well, I can't get, you know, anything else, like, because I have this addiction. But under the proper treatment, you can absolutely be better if you take your meds that you have been prescribed.
Well, in full transparency, I battle anxiety and depression. Yeah. I've been in therapy for like 3 or 4 years, and I just started medication. It was like the last step. It was but I couldn't even start the work because
you can't.
I couldn't
get balanced.
I couldn't, and then I had a baby. So anyway, I say all that to say, like, everyone's journey is different, and I think everyone Black in America should probably be in therapy, but I feel like.
No, you should definitely, if you're Black in America, you should be in therapy. But that's why I think it's important, because I know I've met people that's like, nah, I don't take medicine. Right. And I'm like, nah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the balance of trying to get yourself together from head to toe will help you need less medicine quicker. But if you need it, take it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not for everybody, but it is for some people. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Moving on, this is a question that someone on our team asked. What is your strategy in dealing with white women?
Well,
and what does that mean? What does that question mean? No, it's like a loaded question.
I have a very, very, very straightforward answer.
Okay.
My strategy for dealing with white women is to limit the amount of interaction as much as possible with white women who have not done internal work to deal with their own bias and their own issues, and to limit the amount of time that I give to white women who are not even willing to admit that they don't know what they don't know, and that their behavioral patterns can be harmful. Okay. Right. So
can you give me an example of harmful of them? Just like a small one, because I think some people they'll hear this and they'll be like, that's racist to say.
Well, but it's not. Well, but it's not being racist. It's the truth. If you're not it's like me saying, I'm a single woman, right? But I don't date guys that I know have mommy issues,
Right,
right?
right.
I'm not trying to date people that I can already see how you move. And if I'm on Instagram and you following me, and every time I scroll past one of my good girlfriends' page, you in the comments like, yeah, what's up? Da-da-da. I already know.
Right.
Me and you can't make it. There's somebody for you, but it's not me, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with how I approach looking at white women. You know, there are too many that don't even know or understand what we're talking about. They're like, this, oh my God, you know, you guys are just like dramatizing everything and it's not that bad. And me, we don't do that. And I don't even want to work with you.
Okay.
Because those women also show up and say, but I do care about the issues.
Right.
And I want to find a way. But when they get involved with movements, they are problematic. They become crying Karens. And it almost killed me. So I definitely cannot engage. I am perfectly fine with working with white women who come to the table and say, yo, I really didn't even realize that I was doing this or that. Or,
right.
you know, I didn't realize that I was participating in this behavior that I think I'm fighting it, but I'm doing it. Help me, you know?
Right.
And that doesn't mean they don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Because the white women in the Women's March asked me, what does race have to do with women's rights? We just want to fight for equal pay. But sis, I'm not making as much money as you.
Right. Yeah.
And you want me to work with you to fight your husband. But you're not willing to acknowledge that you also have an advantage on Black women and women of color, right? So that's why we have to talk about race. We've got to talk about race and reproductive rights, because I don't even want to get pregnant because the community that I come from is too dangerous.
Right.
So I'm scared that gun violence might take out my child because the only park that's in our community, they're shooting over there every day. So abortion for me means something different than what it means for you, right? And so those conversations I'm willing to have if you're willing to listen. But if it's going to make you say, oh, that's being racist. If it's going to make you say, oh, you hurt my feelings. Oh, I can't, you know, Tamika's just she's angry. If that's going to be the response, no, thank you. And I have radar for Karen. I know Karen coming, honey. It's Kadar. I know, I can see you. I know, you know, because you're not ready. You come into a room and you have done the work. You're listening more, you're quieter, and you're really processing and asking the right questions. Those are the white women that I work with.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Kanye's current, comments about the whole White Lives Matter situation? Do you think he's being anti-Semitic?
I think that Kanye is upset because he lost his woman.
Okay.
And he's trying to weaponize other communities to help him fight his battle, his personal battle.
Okay.
Let me tell you why I say that.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the clips from the recent interview he did on Drink Champs, he said, if y'all don't want me to wear White Lives Matter t-shirt, then why don't you, then the culture should get behind me when they take my child.
Yeah.
The culture should get behind me. And the question that I said, so now what you're saying is we should be involved in your custody issues, your family business. How many Black men has Kanye helped that can't see their children? What is he involved in that area, in that arena? You're basically weaponizing Black people and basically saying, I'll wear this shirt, which first of all, let's be clear. I believe now people have talked to him and helped him to sort of develop some talking points that resonate more with people.
Yeah.
But if you remember, when he first started, when they asked him why did he wear the t-shirt, he said, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's what he said. He thought it was funny. And then he has developed to the point of, if you don't want me to wear it, then the whole culture should get behind me. And that has been his behavior over and over again. When his deals go bad, he wants everybody to fight for him.
Yeah.
You were wearing a MAGA hat and you was cool. You was over there. Everything was good. Then all of a sudden you have an issue. Now you're Black again and you want to stand with Black people. It's too much. And I think Kanye needs to sit still, be quiet, and get some real help so that he could process his genius. Because I do think that he is intelligent. I think that, in order for him to be able to do everything that he has, been able to produce, there has to be a level of, creative genius that is in his mind and body.
Right.
But what he's doing right now, mixing it with his relationships with people who support white supremacists, is very dangerous. He has the same talking points that white supremacists have for, he's using the same talking points.
Yeah.
It's coming from the same playbook.
Yeah. What do you think about Candace Owens and her documentary about Black Lives Matter?
I don't think about Candace Owens often at all. And if people weren't talking about her, I wouldn't be thinking about her now. She's not an unusual character. She works for and bought and paid for a particular part of this system that has always existed. There have always been Black people who have sided with people who want to be our oppressor, and they do the dirty work for them. And just because she sounds smart, she is smart, you know? And, she presents herself a certain way. When you're dealing with a community of people who at times are hopeless because the life is being choked out of them by all the issues that we deal with, folks look at her and they're like, maybe she can be the one to help get us closer to where it is we're trying to go in terms of people getting liberated. And that's okay. As long as we don't give it attention, I feel like it stays in its bubble. But see, Ye, what he does when he works with her, he's allowing her to tap into our culture. And I hope there is someone around him that is able to let him see how he's being used for her to get her message that is anti-Black into our communities.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. And that's why I can't sit here and waste time feeling sorry for Ye, because what he's doing right now is dangerous to our community.
Okay, let's take a beat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Brutally Honest with Jasmine Brand. And before I let you out of here, I'm here with Tamika Mallory. I have some general life questions I'd like to ask. Okay, so what does freedom look like to you?
Freedom for me looks like, being able to do something else one day, not always having to be in trauma work, being able to finally find or to fulfill other areas of my passion. That's what freedom looks like for me.
What's one advice you wish you could give up?
The comment section.
Yeah, because we were just talking about that.
If I could give up reading the comments
and responding to them. If you could give up reading, you wouldn't respond. So
right, exactly.
All right. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
From my son saying, "Mom, you're growing."
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, that's a good. And I'm, the fact that you asked, and it's always at the top of mind because he said it to me once, and I was like, "Oh my God!" He told me I was cool too, which is like, whoa. Never did I hear that.
What's your biggest professional regret?
Letting they get into my head and stop me from doing things that I wanted to do. Pursuing certain parts of my, goals, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the best thing that's happened to you this year?
The best thing is definitely my baby Blair, my grandbaby, was born, and she is a big joy.
She's so cute.
She's
so pretty.
She's so
with her
beautiful.
Hair. When's the last time you cursed someone out?
Oh, yesterday. This morning. All the time. Okay. That's another vice I need to give up. Cursing people out.
What's one trend in activism you wish you'd like to see end?
I'd love to see an end to. I'd love to see an end to this issue around local communities feeling like people should not come from outside the community to support. I think there needs to be better rules of engagement and I've learned them, and we're still trying to get better at how you approach a community coming from outside. But I think we spend a lot of time fighting over turf. Mm-hmm. And really, it takes all of us to stand together. There's not one of us that, there's not one community that could solve issues on its own behalf, because if you could, we wouldn't be in the midst of this turmoil.
The issue, yeah.
You need additional layers. And so, I would say that for me would be the one thing is like, let's figure out how people who are national voices and have national resources can engage better locally and how local communities can feel more safe to welcome folks to come in and work with them.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to really be that folks sit back and say she tried. And I say that because we get caught into this mentality of it's all my job. I have to fix everything.
Right.
And that's not real.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's impossible also.
We don't have the capacity to fight white supremacy on our own.
Okay.
And so I want people to know that I ran my part of the race and that I was unapologetic about it. I want people to say, even trembling, she might have been stressed, scared, crying, all of that. But she still got up and showed up every day.
Okay. If you had to pick one song as a soundtrack to your life.
I can't pick one.
Give me two.
If I had to pick two, I don't know about this. If I had to pick two songs, let's just say it this way.
Okay.
If I had to pick two artists who have the soundtrack to my life, I would choose Cardi B and Marvin Gaye. Like, I'm right up in there somewhere.
I love that. Okay, last question. If you were allowed to ask God a question loud and clear and he would answer so that you could hear him, what would you ask God? He or she, what would you ask God?
I would ask God, are you pleased? Are you pleased with me?
Okay.
Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Okay. Perfect way to end this interview. I'm super thankful that you came by. I know you have a busy schedule. Please do not be a stranger. It's been an absolute pleasure. Every time I talk to you, I'm just so excited. I've learned so much every time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate it. It was really, really powerful. I feel like I was on the couch getting it out. Like, you're turning into the therapist. It feels good.
Well, and then I was learning stuff from you too. So thank you, Tamika Mallory, for joining me today, telling your story. It's always a pleasure. And we'll be back next Monday on FOXSOUL for another great interview.